celebrate. I'm celebrating with the following people. And number one, my co-authors, Julie O'Mara. Julie is the one who started talking, but let me tell you a little bit. I'm not talking CVs because their CVs are in the documents. But I just want to say that the other non-CV stuff, that Julie is the chairperson of our board, and I call her a ball of energy. She is that. I mean, if you want to see somebody who's constantly, passionately energetic, she is a driver and passionate driver of whatever assignment she has. Julie is a super communicator of note. In a day, you can get a lot of emails from Julie. She never leaves anyone uninformed. And her passion for this work is at level 5 or even 6. And very considerate and inclusive. And that's one of my co-authors. And then I introduce Alan Richter. So Julie's from Las Vegas, based in Las Vegas, and she's there. And Alan Richter, Alan is based in New York, but I claim him because he was born in Cape Town, South Africa, but left many, many, many moons ago, 40 years, more than 40 years. So Alan is a great connector of people. If there's one thing that I know about him, he connected me to this community. He really is good with that, and an amazing spirit of abundance that Alan has. And he is our time zone specialist. If Julie and I are talking and we don't know, I'm from South Africa, I don't know these day-night savings and whatever. So we just say, Alan, and then Alan will tell us, this is what the time is in your country. Thank you so much to my 2 co-authors. And then myself, I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I brought into this team my African perspective, my African flavor. And this is undoubtedly my passion work, and I call it my ministry. So those are the 3 co-authors for the benchmarks. I also want to introduce you to the board. You know, these are people who have been toiling with us. We have a board, Lorelei Kabolante, Ralph Chavet, Zahid. Zahid is the one we said hi earlier. Zahid Mubarak, and then Julie Allen, I've spoken about, Melanie Harrington, myself there, Charlotte Sweeney, Linda White. So in terms of the board, Julie is the chairperson, Alan is the treasurer of the board, and I'm the secretary of the board, and all the board members, we meet every month. And the board helps us with shaping the center in terms of where it's going. And they've really done a sterling job in terms of getting us to where we are now. And it's important, after I introduce the board, that our mission for the center, our mission is to serve as a resource for research and education for individuals and organizations in their quest to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion practices around the world. This is our aim all the time, around the world. And then we also have a global council, Global Inclusion Council, and those are the members, Nasima, Ahmed, Roshini Anad. Some of them I know are here on the platform. Amy Bossetti, Chris Cavallo, Ronald Copeland, Masekhoa Masire Mwamba, Mpoma Gwana, Suzanne Price, May Snowden, and Monica Vilanta. What we did is that as the co-authors, we said, how can we reach out, and also helped by some of the EPs, how can we reach out to people who can help us just at advisory level? So those are the role players in the, but most importantly, we keep on talking about 112 expert panelists. Imagine a book, because this is a guidebook. Imagine a book that has the contribution of 112 diversity, equity, and inclusion experts from around the world. And I mean, this is wealth of information that you're having here. So these are the expert panelists. I know some of them are in today and some will join tomorrow. A very big thank you for the many, many hours and days of ensuring that this book is where it is right now. Now for the fun, not that the other was not fun. So what we want to do is that we want you, we're using the Mentimeter, So I'm hoping some people have used the Mentimeter. Even if you haven't, no problem. So can you take your smartphone? If you don't have your smartphone, go to on your laptop, go to your browser, and then go to www.menti.com. And then you might get a message that says join presentation, and they'll ask you for a code. There's the code. But if you want the quicker version, take your phone and right in the center of that QR code, something will pop up. If it pops up, that's a questionnaire to our Mentimeter. And we are starting with a first fun question. The main question we want to ask you, where are you from? But the first one is a fun question that says, what is your favorite music genre? We just want to see the people who are on this, that what's your favorite music genre? So I'm assuming everybody has gotten to Menti either via QR code or through the Menti. Great. I want to stop share so that, so the first question is the fun one. But, oh yes. Look at, we have rhythm and blues is winning. Rhythm and blues, R&B. Oh yeah, I'm there as well. I didn't vote, but I know I'm there. R&B. And then the next best, okay, none of these. Okay, we thought we really researched genres. Rock is the second highest. Oh, no, jazz, 13. It's growing. So it's just for fun. This is really just to get everybody. Oh, train, tropical music. Okay. What is the code? Somebody's asking the code.
It's at the top of the screen. If you look at the screen, the code is 6835524.
Yeah. Okay, this one was just for fun. So at least there is, at every single option, there is a person who loves something. Afrobeats missing. Okay, sure, there's a lot missing. Thank you. All right. So this was just a fun one. The main question that we want to ask, I've introduced the co-authors and that. Now we want to say, where are you joining us from? So you'll see a blue button, take it to your country, and you can actually, with your 2 fingers, you can zoom and actually make that bigger so that you at least see where your country is. I hope everybody knows they are. People are already saying they come from the sea here in the middle. So, go to your country so that we see where many people are coming from. Wow. It's already telling you where everybody is from. Okay. I think between US and Canada, I'm sure they're sharing 178 there. We're seeing Brazil, Argentina, South Africa. I don't want to only say South Africa because it's close to Namibia and Botswana, and that they are all somewhere down here. Yeah, this is interesting. This is just for fun to say, where does everybody come from? Is there a continent missing? Yes. Somebody must come from here. Oh yeah, there is. Maybe this blue button wanted to be here. So no Australia, I know. No, I'm sure there's someone from Australia. The EPs, we even have EPs from Australia. Maybe the button got lost there.
They'll be on the next call.
On tomorrow's call, given their time zone.
Okay. Oh, because of the time zones. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it's about 3 a.m. in Australia. Thank you for that. Okay, so
the buttons in the Philippines, that's early a.m. too.
So the majority are between, I think, North America here and Canada. I think I want to say, and then 44 Southern Africa. Let me rather say Southern. I don't want to say South Africa to be biased. Yes, and there is a combination, maybe it's Ukraine, and there's some Spain, somewhere there, I hope. Yeah, Thank you. There's India, 3 from India. You can also see that. I think here, is it Pakistan or Iran, somewhere there. We know if it was bigger, you'll be able to see. But great, thank you so much. We have about 347 people who have told us where they are based, where they come from. 5 from Pakistan, yes, yes. Yeah, that is what I was saying here. And it looks like 3 from India. Thank you, everyone. We're not just stopping the fun, but we just wanted to have an idea. Okay. Right, let's go to Tanya. I need to go to the slides now. This one will come later. Yeah. Okay, now let's move on. The most important thing when we were developing this is that the authors, we wrote a message, really a message that we felt was very important to share with you. So I'm gonna read this message. It's a message from the authors. It says, the year 2020 will go down in history as a year of dramatic change. We do not yet know what changes will emerge post-COVID-19 pandemic. What we do know is that everything was impacted profoundly. Contrary to earlier assertions, COVID-19 was not the great equalizer. Instead, it laid bare the deep chasm of social, political, economic, and organizational inequities that blight the lives of so many. The world faced multiple layers of complex change, global economic disruption, growing inequality, the dangers of authoritarianism, and geopolitical fragmentation. We also witnessed an unprecedented outpouring of support for social justice around the world. We have updated these benchmarks at a time when many people are grappling with the consequences of physical, social, and psychological trauma that stem from various forms of injustice. We, as the GDEIB authors, stand in support of all those around the world who have experienced racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and all other forms of discrimination and exclusion. Ongoing systems of oppression and inequalities must be dismantled. Many organizations and communities are no longer satisfied with platitudes or superficial engagements. They desire bold action and systemic transformation, led by committed leaders, where acts of discrimination and exclusion are named for what they are. The murder of George Floyd and many others before and after him, and the removal of statues and symbols of oppression became catalysts for social justice around the world. We acknowledge those who continue to stand up and speak out against oppressive laws and practices despite personal risks. The intensification of the Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and gender-based violence movements and other global protest movements accelerated the need for strong action and allyship in support of marginalized voices. We honor all those who lost their lives while fighting against discrimination and injustice. We find ourselves at a pivotal moment where we can continue down the destructive path we have been on of inequity, injustice, and exploitation, or we can choose a different sustainable path of justice, equity, and social cohesion. It's time for action. Through the work of the GDEIB, we call on everyone to work towards a fair, inclusive, and equitable workplace, and a society where privilege and patriarchy do not control access and opportunity, where diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just a dream, but attainable reality for all. Now more than ever, we need to reach into our hearts and create a stronger narrative around DEI, one that recognizes our humanity at the level of every individual. The concept of Ubuntu, which literally means I am because we are, combines the values of respect, dignity, integrity, and community that allows us all to strive towards sustainability. The GDEIB meets the needs of various stakeholders. It seeks to connect us based on universal values across all differences. We must galvanize all leaders and DEI practitioners to be vocal and dismantle inequity and exclusion. It is time for decisive and courageous action. This is a message that we wrote and we feel, and I hope it resonates with all of you as we go about this work. So before I hand over to Alan, I won't read this. There are quotes, nice quotes from the users of GDEIB. There's one from Nancy in Tokyo, Japan, and there's one from Nadia from Zurich in Switzerland, and also one from Ore Stewart in New York. So basically, we have lots of, in the book itself, there's lots of stories, lots of quotes where people tell you what the previous versions have done for them. I would now like to hand over to Alan to go into the details of the book, our guidebook.
Thank you so much, Nini. And I'm now going to tell you the story of the GDEIB. And if we go to the next slide, there's a complex diagram here, which I'll try to decipher to explain how did this come about, how and why. It all starts way back when I was beginning to do diversity work at the end of the 80s, early 90s. I came across something called Benchmarks for Diversity, which was an interesting piece of research done by the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a government agency here in the US that builds dams. And interestingly enough, they had got funding to do some research and development on benchmarks for diversity. What are best practices around diversity? I used that in the 90s with a number of clients, but it became less and less useful as the field of diversity developed and grew and evolved, and it became less and less useful. And when I took it overseas, I remember going to the World Health Organization, it just didn't work because the language was all American. Now, at the time in the late 90s, I was a member together with Julia O'Meara of something called the Diversity Collegium, and you can see they became a sponsor for a brief time of our benchmarks. The Collegium was a remarkable think tank started by African-American diversity consultants and then enlarged to include everyone else. And that's where I met Julie, and we bemoaned the fact that so many clients of ours at the time were doing what we would call performative diversity work. They weren't thinking systemically. They would have a network or they would do ethnic foods, and they thought they were doing great stuff. And we knew that we needed to up the stakes, you know, really get more strategic and systemic around diversity and inclusion. Note that the Tennessee Valley Authority's work didn't even have the word inclusion. That sort of emerged very strongly in the late 90s into 2000s. And early in the 2000s, Julie and I decided we should actually develop a global benchmarking tool. And rather than start from scratch, we thought, well, let's use the TVA's benchmarks. We asked for permission, we got permission. They told us this was done on government research money, and so it should be free to use. It was free to use. Would we continue to keep that as a gift to the field? And we agreed that yes, the 2006 GDEIB would be free to the field. You'll notice there were 46 expert panelists. Nini, I'm proud to say, was one of those first expert panelists. We wanted to bring in people from outside the US. In 2011, 5 years later, again, the field continues to evolve. And we, at that point, came up with the model, what you see behind me, the image behind me, this notion of there are foundational categories, internal, external.
What are you doing?
Bridging. We just need to mute someone. And that would really give structure to the benchmarks. And then they were updated as well in 2011. 2014, the Collegium became the sponsor because Julie and I needed a home for this. It shouldn't just exist on our personal websites, company websites. and the Collegium became the sponsor. All the Collegium members contributed to the benchmarks anyway. In 2016, we built the third edition. At that point, the new edition was the edition of sustainability, connecting diversity with sustainability, following the UN's remarkable Sustainable Development Goals published in 2015. The Collegium was really coming to the end of its life, and Julia and I sort of decided that we needed a new home for it, and that's when the creation of the Center for Global Inclusion in 2017 became the home for the benchmarks. The big change then was also our decision to invite Nini to be a co-author with us. A tremendously smart move on our part. We, both white, older consultants, and Nini has tremendous insights and tremendous experience, and the three of us, I think, have done quite a remarkable job looking for all the strengths from each of us in putting together the 2021 benchmarks. However, we could not have done that without 112 amazing people from all over the world contributing as expert panelists. And by the way, the 2021 edition with 112 expert panelists has a majority of expert panelists not from North America. So that was a conscious decision to include many more from Latin America, Africa, Middle East, Asia, and Europe. Can we go to the next slide? So what are the big changes from 2016 to 2021? Again, this field continues to evolve from diversity to diversity and inclusion, from diversity and inclusion to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is so big an issue, given what's happened in the last 5 years, that we've made it part of the name, creating a more equitable and better functioning organizations, putting equity throughout the benchmarks. You'll notice that when you download the new edition. There are two other major trends besides equity that have made its way strongly into our new benchmarks. One is technology. The accelerated pace of change. Artificial intelligence is not only taking over our lives, but will continue to. And so the possible bias in algorithms is a huge, huge challenge, and we have to address that. Technology is neutral. Technology can be used for the most wonderful things in the world. I think back 100 years when my grandfather died in the last pandemic, and I think today, in 100 years, technology has enabled us to, understand, DNA, to develop vaccines, which we couldn't do 100 years ago in that pandemic. The internet allows us to work today remotely. It didn't exist 100 years ago. Amazing changes. So technology is another huge component that comes into our new benchmarks. And then the third, obviously we've lived through incredibly difficult, trying times with this pandemic. Remote work must become, is now a must with the pandemic. This means we have to also continue to create psychological safety for all workers, promoting wellness and self-care. There's also a revised category. We've gone from procurement to responsible and ethical sourcing. That's a rework on our last category. And we've really tried to be more action-oriented and more bold, because social justice really is becoming a dominant part of the work that DEI consultants and experts work on. So those are the changes. If we can go to the next slide. Yep, go ahead. We're not going to give you all the definitions, but here's the equity definition. It's about fairness and justice. It's about taking deliberate actions to remove systemic group and individual barriers and obstacles that hinder opportunity and disrupt well-being. Equity is achieved through the elimination of policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that create and reinforce unfair outcomes. Next slide. So what are the ultimate goals of DEI? It's to create a better, more equitable world for everyone. It's to advance an inclusive culture, and it's to improve organizational effectiveness. Now, there are 5 approaches to DEI. This we developed, I think, in the 2016 edition, and now we've just refined it a little further in 2021. You'll see being in compliance, advocating for social justice, building competence, honoring dignity, and developing the organization. They overlap. It's not an either or. This is about a both and. But what is important, I think, in our new edition is that the rising importance of social justice, making those bold statements and taking bold actions, has gained in importance. And I think that's the key here for our message. Next slide. What is a benchmark? Just to be clear, it's an organizational standard of performance. It's usually stated as an end or an outcome. That's the way we've formulated all of our benchmarks. There are 275 in the new edition. And benchmarking the activity helps people in organizations certainly understand what best practices are and then can achieve or aspire to high quality results. Okay, here's the model. Now you can see in 2011 is when we came up with the foundation of the model in terms of the 4 groupings. And here are all of the 15 categories that make up the GDEIB model. This is truly about as systemic as we can get about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think the next slide actually gives you the full titles. Is that right? Yeah, we go. So now you can see that in the foundation, we need vision, strategy, and business impact. We need leadership and accountability, and we need DEI structure and implementation. Foundation, we can't build any kind of home without those foundations. The internal, again, in the old days where a lot of diversity was focused in human resources, still very important, but only part of the systemic picture. Recruitment, advancement and retention, job design, classification and compensation, pay equity is huge. And then very big with the pandemic, work-life integration, flexibility and benefits. We know we are moving into a hybrid world as far as work goes. Bridging, which connects internal, external, foundational, assessment, measurement, and research. We got to do that. DEI communications internally and externally. DEI learning and development, which is not just internal, though it's heavily internal, it's also with other stakeholders. And then connecting DEI and sustainability. That's the new one that was brought in 2016. Finally, diversity, equity, and inclusion must focus on, must listen and serve society. So we've got community, government relations, and philanthropy. We've got services and product development, how critical that is. That's where all this AI stuff becomes huge. Marketing and customer service, and lastly, responsible sourcing. Next slide. So for each one of those 15 categories, which really covers the waterfront, so to speak, of DEI, we have 5 levels, and we have benchmarks at each of the 5 levels. Level 1 is inactive. There's no DEI work. Nothing has happened. Oops, can we go back a sec? Level 2, we're moving up from nothing to compliance. You know, we've got some laws that we have to comply with. So that's doing the bare minimum in terms of reactive. We're reacting to what governments are telling us. I know this will keep going back and forth. We should have turned off the progress. Level 3, proactive. Now we have a clear awareness of the value of DEI. We're starting to implement DEI systemically. We're starting to think systemically, proactive, not reactive. And this for us is really a sort of a baseline. We want to get all of our organizations we work with at least at level 3. Let's get beyond 1 and 2. Then we go to 4, which means implementing DEI systemically and showing improved results over time. And then finally, level 5, fantastic, demonstrating current global best practices in DEI. Now, it's current, and so in 5 years' time, if we do the 2026 edition, believe me, there will be new benchmarks because the field, you know, continues to develop. I'll never forget Roosevelt Thomas talking about pioneering work in DEI. Pioneering work is best practice plus. You know, you're the first out there doing something quite remarkable. So these are the 5 levels. Just to give you an example here in category 1, vision, strategy, and business impact, the action is to develop a strong rationale for DEI vision, mission, strategy, and align it to the organization's goals. And here are just 2 of the level 5 best practices. There are a bunch more than 2. DEI is embedded in organizational culture as a core value, a source of innovation, and a means to sustainability and success. And the second best practice is the organization is proactive and responsive to DEI challenges that are faced by society, including but not limited to political and economic trends, and recognizes that organizations are microcosms of the society in which they operate. Really social conscience here in that one. Just to pick another one, we've taken this now from the external category, community, government relations, philanthropy. The action is to be proactive in working with community, public and private partnerships, government and society at large, and through philanthropy. 2 examples: the organization helps its community by promoting economic growth, addressing income inequality and groups that have been historically disadvantaged, or serving those most in need. Second example, best practice: the organization takes bold stands in word and action on societal issues related to achieving equity and justice for marginalized people. So those are just a couple of examples. Of course, there are many, many more in all 15 of these categories. Now, we've got to say something about how we built this. This is part of the wonderful story, and the research involved our expert panelists. We are 3 authors, and we see things differently, which is part of our diversity as 3 authors, but we have 112 people advising us. And we wanted to get the collective viewpoints of our expert panelists. They were selected, all of our expert panelists selected by the authors from recommendations based on criteria and breadth and depth in DEI. Practitioners, scholars, authors, a variety of diversity dimensions, backgrounds, and areas of expertise. We really did go out of our way to make sure that we had not only geographic diversity, but we looked at many of the other dimensions of diversity in order to see that we had those well reflected or represented on our panel. The research process involved 3 rounds. The middle round, which is the breakout groups, we wanted you to see we had 14 research groups, and all 112 were placed in one of these 14 groups. One was on ability and disabilities, one was on the 5 approaches, one was ensuring global inclusion, one was on generational differences. We had a big group on gender, sex, gender identity, transgender pronouns, LGBTQ+. We had one on just focused on the internal benchmarks because we knew we had to reframe those, and we've done that in this edition. One on incorporating equity and renaming the GDEIB. That came up with the GDEIB as the name, and they also gave us tremendous examples of how to put equity into the benchmarks. We had one group focused just on the impact of the pandemic and what the new normal will look like. One focused on race, racial identity, and related complexities. One focused on religion, one focused on socioeconomic class, one on supplier diversity, which ended up with our ethical sourcing, one on sustainability. We wanted that to go back to that. That was a new one in 2016. We wanted to revise and refresh that for 2021. And lastly, we had an amazing group on the technology of the future, on AI and robotics, et cetera, et cetera. And thank you to all of those EPs who did an amazing job helping us, you know, with the work of updating this edition. Do want to share with you, typically, now this is 2017, we do not have 2021 results because we've just launched the GDEIB, but the GDEIB, the last version, looking at the thousands of people who have downloaded the GDEIB and the permissions, you know, the user agreements for that, you can see that we've broken it down, looking at the numbers as who is using the GDEIB, and this is in sequence here of highest to lowest. Large corporations, 17%, education, 14%, government, 13%, pretty high. Independent consultants, 13%, nonprofits, 12%, that's pretty big too. And then I guess finance, that could be independent, it could be for-profit or not-for-profit, similarly with healthcare. Students and researchers made up 6%, which is wonderful to see so many researchers. Medium and small companies, consulting firms, and finally the military have been using this 1%. So we've got a tremendously wide range here of users. At this point, before we go on to our getting words from our users, let me just ask my wonderful co-authors, what would you add? Anything I've missed here? Nini, Julie, please jump in.
You said it so well, Alan. I think for me, the one thing I would add is that the fact that in 2021, just around the world, from 2020, people want something that is different, something that is tangible. And when I look at what we did with the benchmarks, we really tried to say, how will it make a difference? You know, even with the different organizations we work with, people say, yeah, so what after you've written a statement of support? So what? We've heard statements before. So we're trying to say how, when we said it's time for action, that's what I love about some of the new additions on the new benchmarks this year. Yeah.
Yeah, Alan, I just have actually two more things. One is just to emphasize that this is not a quick fix. This is, you really need to dig into this deeply. If you want something, or if your organization wants something that just check off the box, this really isn't a check off the box thing. This is a lot of work, and a lot of work with systems. And then also we have some translations. So by June, I hope maybe later in the summer, we will have updated the French and the Portuguese translation that we have now. And we're finally getting around to doing Spanish. And we have volunteers to do that. And there'll be some other opportunities too for a sponsorship, but the translations are very important to us. We also have one customized version on higher education. And we're right now just deciding whether or not we'll update that or do something different. But the three translations are yet to come. Let us know if you want something. You know, we'll try to accommodate. That's it. Yeah. So it's now my pleasure to introduce three of our expert panelists and a user who are going to share their stories of using it. So the first one is Karen Francis, and Karen heads up diversity and inclusion for AIR, which is the American Institutes for Research. They're located in the Washington, DC area. Karen, to you. Thank you very much for doing this. Karen, maybe you need to unmute. I know she's here. Karen? Tanya, Amma, help.
Yeah, she's been here actually all along.
I
Let's go
know.
to the next speaker. She was having a thunderstorm in her part of the world. So if we can go to the next.
I thought that was someone else. Okay, how about Zahid? Can you come on? All
We
right,
had
so
said the order was Kailash after that, but it's fine.
okay, so Zahid.
Yeah.
So Zahid,
Sure.
Mubarak is, hi Zahid, thank you for doing this. So Zahid is one of our expert panelists, has been for some time. And he's also a member of our board of directors. And he has his own organization called HR Metrics. And he's also president of SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management in Pakistan. He's been doing an amazing job in Pakistan. Go Zahid.
Thank you so much, Julie. Can you hear me very well?
Yes,
we
very
can.
well.
Wonderful. So I think this is a great opportunity for everyone, and a special congratulations to yourself, Nini and Ellen, and all the expert panelists. Sharing my experience, because I worked on the GDEIB, the previous version, with almost 42 organizations in past 5 years. So once we started, we were just, we had only 3 organizations, but now there are 42. So to me, it's a very strong indication that organization very, I would say, value added in terms of its, how does it impact the organization performance. The thing that I want to share, the GDEIB, why I'm a big fan of it, that it today everyone talks about the sustainability, but the most important question is that what can be done to achieve sustainability at the organization level? And that is where the GDEIB comes, because it takes care of the at least 6 sustainable development goals. And you have a very strong framework with a very 360 approach, where you have the foundation taking care of the strategy, the people management.
Hey, Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Karen. Sorry.
So you start with a clear business case, and you end up with the sustainability and the assessment, and you can determine at to what extent your organization is making the social or the financial impact. Nini, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. I think Julie needs to mute. Yeah, you are fine. You're fine, Zahid.
Okay, so I was saying that there's a clear linkages between the organization performance and from the sustainability perspective. Second thing is that I try to, whenever I come across, which is
we're losing you.
Okay, what I'm trying to saying that GDEIB is a comprehensive document in a sense that the previous version had just 25 dimensions, but the current one has got 28 different dimensions, including not just the gender, but the age, disability, thinking style, the culture, religion. So you have everything clubbed together, and the organization is in a very good position to not just identify the gaps, but carry out the benchmarking and also develop the strategy to leverage their performance. Now, one of the key learning that I had in this 5 years time frame was that many organizations take a balanced approach. That means that they look at the strategy, they take the people management into consideration, the product and services, and the bridging aspect. But sometimes very few organizations take a selective approach. I mean, they have at times over-reliance on the recruitment and development or the training, but without realizing that if they do not have the strong strategy in place, unless they do not have a real evaluation framework with them, they would not be in a position to do it on a sustainable basis. So that's my recommendation for the organizations, or particularly for someone who wants to start it up, to take a back approach. It's a very comprehensive document. And if you do it in a progressive manner and you shift the gear progressively, I can see that there are a lot of benefits and a lot of takeaway, not only for you personally, but also for the organization and for the society. That's what I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zahid. Thanks for your input.
Thank you, Zahid. And we're helping Karen get back on. We lost internet connection for her. So Kailash, would you please go next and share your story? And Kailash is head of diversity and inclusion with Anglo Gold Ashanti in South Africa. Kailash. Kailash.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. The host was not allowing me to unmute. Can you hear me now?
We can. Sorry, we can hear you, Kailash.
Okay, so I'm literally going to go on to video for about a second just to say hi to everybody, and you can see my face. We have an awful thunderstorm where I live, and it's going to impact on bandwidth. So hi to everybody from a really rainy and wet South Africa. So greetings to everybody, and congratulations on the launch of the Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Benchmarks. Representing Anglo Gold Ashanti, a global mining company that is headquartered in Johannesburg, with a global footprint across South America, Africa, and Australia. And I'll just take a few minutes of your time to take you through our journey using the GDEIB. Our diversity and inclusion portfolio was tasked to assess our gender standing across our operations. And this process started off using a gender lens. But once on site, the realization was clear that diversity and inclusion was far broader than just gender. The Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmark provided us with a great tool that our organization could use to explore and understand diversity and inclusion across our diverse platform. It allowed us, our initial work was actually on diversity and inclusion, and it's been elevated beyond compliance and just ticking the box. The benchmark has provided a systematic and structural approach to diversity and inclusion, creating a platform for a truly transformative journey. And critical to the continuous growth, and once you reach a leadership level, continuous growth is still something that we look at. So the continuous growth and learning was allowed through the self-reflection, where our leaders were able to navigate a host of questions. Am I walking the talk? Am I living this as a leader right now? Am I leading my people through diversity and inclusion? And the benchmarks, by their nature, are developmental, and this has provided a clear roadmap with tools that transform our workplace. So each of our operations through this journey has identified their own burning platform, highlighting our oneness in our diversity. And so, you know, when I looked at the spectrum of what's the word, of alignment to diversity, AngloGold Ashanti is looking to move from reactive to somewhere between proactive and progressive, and ultimately being at best practice. You know, these transformative discussions are very emotive. So I think to make a sudden leap is a little bit dangerous. So we have to do them slowly. And we're moving. Thank God we're not, we don't have zero initiatives in place. So we are reactive at the moment. And one of the important things that this tool has allowed us to realize is that education is the basis of understanding where we are. So through this, we've used, and hats off to Nini and her team, Nini's organization called Mandate Molefi. We've used them to run our unconscious bias sessions globally. So I think through the Collegium, Nini has allowed us to tap into resources across the globe around where we have operations. And we've run the unconscious bias sessions. So what may be your burning platform in Tanzania is not necessarily the burning platform in Australia. And this has allowed everybody to understand that diversity is so broad. And this is where we've brought in our oneness in our diversity. So my message to everybody online is it's an absolutely wonderful tool. You have to embrace it to be able to see the benefit. And we are now in the process of growing and learning using this tool. So thank you to everybody, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kailash. Julie, you touch on these few things.
Right, we're still searching to get Karen back on. So let me go ahead and we'll bring her in a little bit later if we can get her back on. So I want to just share a little bit about the future of the GDEIB because we do have big plans. So one is that we're going to be doing certification. Now, this will be a voluntary certification, not required, but we've had many of our users ask for just a little bit of additional help in terms of understanding the totality of the global diversity and inclusion benchmarks. We're in the process of designing the certification, so I can't say what it's going to be, but right now in the era of COVID, it will start off at least being virtual, and then we'll see what happens afterwards. I would like to ask anyone on this call who is interested in being part of the design team for this certification or interested in any way to just email us at the center. You can go on the website and you'll see the email process through that. It's the center at Center for Global Inclusion. The second thing that we're doing, and this is like after years and years and years, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of requests to digitize it. So we finally do feel that we have, well, quite frankly, the money, thanks to our sponsors, to do the digitization. So for that, we are searching for a tech partner in this and also a committee that will guide us. So please help us with that and that. So you know, that's what's in the future. Go ahead, you can go to the launch page. We're also just announcing that there will be several more launches held way back before COVID. We were able to do them in person with food and wine and all kinds of, you know, celebration and that. So these for right now will be virtual. They will be on our website. So go to our website under events. And as we know more about each of these launches, and one of them will be in Portuguese, one of them will be in Spanish. Maybe we can talk Stefan into doing one in French, but go on the website and we'll keep you up to date on the regional launches. Also on the website, you'll see the newsletter. So we'd like you very much to sign up for our monthly newsletter. And we are always open to doing more research. So whatever ideas you have, please let us know about them because we want to help you do your work better. And we need to know what would be helpful, like what kind of research and what kind of other user tools you need and that sort of thing. So we just appreciate you so much in helping us with this, and please volunteer. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Nick. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Julie. We want to form a word cloud now with telling us what you love most about the GDEIB. Even if you haven't used it, having heard what's in the 2021, what excites you about it. So you'll find that question in your Menti. So if you forgot the code, here's the code. So just tell us what excites you about the GDEIB, what do you love most about it. And then I'll stop share, and then Tanya, once you voted, Tanya will show us what people say. The big word, comprehensive. Yes. Global. Collaboration. Yes, indeed. Yeah, something that gives structure. Knowledge. Framework. Yes. Great to see. So comprehensive is the bigger one there. Okay, 252. All right. Thank you. I think we're getting a good picture of what it is that people love about the GDEIB. Thanks, Tanya. Stop share, and then I'll share the slide. So, this is just an ongoing reminder that we're getting into a question and answer session, but please type in, I know people have already started anyway, typing in any questions or point of clarity that you might need. Not all questions will be answered on this platform because we have, earlier we had almost like 600 people. There are more answers in the guidebook. When you get the book, there's Q&A. Whenever we were thinking ahead that what might be a question that somebody might want to ask. So we did a Q&A. There's a lot of Q&As there. But let us see, Tanya will help us with Julie, Alan, Tanya, Amalia will help us to see what are some of the questions that we can just lift into plenary and respond to those questions. If you can stay with us to the end, we want you to stay to the end, just to finish together. So let's hear some of the questions that you might have. We'll just take a few.
Great. So one of the first and